Ladies and gentlemen, what better way is there to enjoy brunch on a Saturday morning where football has finally returned to us? Shouty Hall of Fame game aside, with 95% backups and third stringers. What better way to enjoy your Saturday morning after the return of football than to come to your favorite NFL podcast that there is out there? At least we assume we're your favorite, because why else would you be watching us? But in all seriousness, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast, the podcast every week that is all about fun, football, and chaos. And we are here for yet another week of our roundabout way of going through the NFL, going through each division in our 2023 NFL divisional breakdowns. It is the beasts of the East over the next 2 weeks, as we are talking about two of the better divisions in football this season, starting today with the NFC East. But of course, as always, I cannot do this by myself. I wouldn't do this by myself, because subjecting any human being to my voice for over an hour is probably capital punishment in some way, shape, or form. Joining me, my compatriots of chaos, as always, making us the truculent, troublesome trio that we always are. First, joining me, the master of games here on the show, and a man who's been to, I think, 75 concerts over the last weeks, plus a Yankees and a Mets game, I think. And maybe and maybe he tried to sneak a trip to the Titanic underseas, but actually came back alive. Justin, how are we doing today?
Tired and not prepared to play games.
Man.
As you know.
Yeah, totally not. Justin's taking the week off from trivia, as he very much deserves.
It's the second week in a row.
It's okay. Every games master deserves time off, my friend. Every games master deserves time off. And joining us as always, the man himself, the Podfather, future live golf competitor? Podfather Rick. Rick, how we doing?
If the Saudis want to pay me $30 million for my golfing talents, shooting 90s and 80s all the time, then that's fine by me. I have no problem with that. No, it's funny you mentioned the Yankees, Jurg. I'm actually heading to Yankee Stadium tomorrow. I'm a Mets fan, of course, but my wife is a Yankees fan, and we have tickets. And do you happen to know the promotion for tomorrow's Yankee game, Jurg? I think you'll enjoy it.
Is it a bobblehead night?
It's Harry Potter Day,
hey.
which means it's the Harry Potter caps, which means that you get them at random. So it'll be sorted as we're walking into the stadium, and then trade the ones, because we'll get Slytherin, because who wants that, and so
of course,
yeah.
I could. Ooh, Justin, what do you want to guess of which hat he's going to get when he gets in there?
I feel like he would probably be a Ravenclaw, but I think you're going to get Slytherin. I think.
Ah, damn you.
I think.
See, I want to go for pure humor.
It would be so perfect for Rick to walk out and they're like, "Here you go, you're Slytherin." And he's like, "Ah!"
No, the better thing would be if they recognize him from the show and they give him Slytherin on purpose, just to spite him.
Oh yeah, well that would be something. I mean, I'm sure those Yankees Stadium, security guards would love to see my face after seeing it on the podcast today. That'd be great. Yeah.
Hey, I'm willing to bet there's one security guard or ticket vendor somewhere in this country that watches us. I don't know where, but I'm sure it happens.
Yeah. Shout out to Luis at the Amway Center.
So as we have that, I was actually going to say personally, I think for the pure spectacle of it, Rick should get a Hufflepuff hat, and then he'll immediately be trying to trade it as soon as he gets it.
No, actually, that works out, because if I do get a Hufflepuff hat, it's going right to my sister and my nephew, because they're both Hufflepuffs, so that'll work out really well. Because you know what? I'm not really a Yankees hat guy, because again, Mets fan here, so what am I doing wearing a Yankees hat? Let's be real here. So
there we go. But that small dilution interlude into baseball aside, the main course of today's episode, ladies and gentlemen, the meat and potatoes that we'll get to in the football portion of the show, is, of course, us continuing the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast 2023 NFL divisional breakdowns. Like I said, at the top of the show, we're going to be going through the NFC East, home of the defending NFC champions, 3 playoff teams in the playoffs last season from the NFC East alone. I believe the most of any division in the NFC last year, obviously speaking. So the NFC, pretty good talent, especially in this division. And what a time it's going to be for us to go through those 4 teams. And, for, 2 in particular, totally respectable fan bases that will respect our opinion if we disagree with how we think their team is going to do this upcoming season. Totally will not be a war in the comments if we say anything blasphemous. Rick, I'm looking at you.
I'm ready to make some enemies, man. This is going to be a fun one.
As if we don't have enough already. But before we get to that, ladies and gentlemen, as you know, before we get to the football, we must start with the fun and games now. Justin, going back, it's 2 weeks paid time off of the games master portion of it. He still has to be on the show, but, the games portion is taking a backseat. So, yet again, we have trivia at home, and the trivia at home is what I have to contribute.
I mean, I was kind of hoping that we would have to, guess the Fish song by the lyrics that Justin would sing for us, but that's neither here nor there.
Let's also, the key portion of me running it this time is also, let's not get a copyright strike here, Rick.
Oh, well, I suppose that Justin would tell us the lyrics and we would guess the song, not play the song.
So, no, but the thing is that Justin will say it so perfectly, the algorithm will think he is singing, and therefore we'll get a copyright strike.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. Yeah.
So as I try to protect the show in every which way, shape, or form from Rick getting us either strikes from YouTube or strikes from people in certain cities and countries, let's go, boys. Thomas Patrick Brady. His middle name's Patrick, isn't it? Or is it Edward?
I thought it was Thomas Patrick Edward Brady.
Oh, it's one or the other. Who knows?
That's Edward Patrick.
Thomas Edward Patrick Brady.
Yeah.
There were a lot of touchdowns in his career, boys. Right? As, well, one of you is a Jets fan. One of you is, well, no longer a Jets fan. You guys would know that personally. And even then, Tom Brady threw a decent chunk of touchdowns against the Chicago Bears as well, Rick.
Well, obviously, yes, it did.
But there are 5 teams in Tom Brady's illustrious career that he did not throw double-digit touchdowns against through all their matchups against these teams. Who are those 5 teams?
Interesting.
You're muted, Justin.
I totally saw this post that you're referencing, and I cannot for the life of me think of the answers.
Ooh, I was scared there for a second.
I totally saw it. I know the most I think was as the Jets and the Dolphins, I believe.
Well, that's pretty obvious, I would say.
Yeah,
it's actually the Bills and the Dolphins.
Oh, is it?
Well,
The Bills, Jets must have been third then.
So Jets are in third at 63, and the Dolphins and Bills are both tied at 75 apiece.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you have to kind of go against what you think you would know and try and find teams that the Patriots would have rarely, if ever, faced. So you're talking about a team they might have played every 4 years, but also a team that they probably would never have faced because they never finished first in their division, because that's how it works, right? You finish first place in the division, you face the first place team in their respective division, right? So if they were playing the NFC North one year, let's say, and they were facing the Packers, Vikings, Lions, and Bears, that would be the only time they would play the Lions, for example. And if Brady threw 6 touchdowns in one game against the Lions, expected. But, I mean, did he is the question. I don't know if he did. But even with Tampa Bay, even the years he was with Tampa Bay, I don't believe he played certain teams that often. So, I don't know, Justin. I don't know if you think I think the Lions might be a good first guess here because I rarely, if ever, did I see the Patriots and the Lions in a matchup like that.
I think the Lions is probably a good shout. I was thinking something along the lines of like the Cardinals, again, a team he just never played.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like I remember games of him just going in and lighting up the Lions. That's the thing. I don't know why. But yeah. Listen, we have a couple guesses. It's not a bad shout.
Yeah, it's not bad. I do like your Cardinals guess too, because you're right. That's another team that they rarely, if ever, played. And even like I said, even when it was with Tampa, I would venture to say he did do that too. So yeah, I will go first with the Detroit Lions as my first guess.
And then Justin will follow up with his Cardinals guess?
Yeah, sure. So. Why not?
Cool. All right. So, Rick, for the Detroit Lions, you are right. Brady didn't really play them too much. I don't have the exact number of matchups, but Brady really didn't play them too much in his career when you think about it. So that does limit it. Tom Brady in his career against the Detroit Lions threw 11 touchdowns against them. Okay. I should say, to be fair, this does say total touchdowns, but I'm assuming majority of them are passing. But yes, total touchdowns against the Detroit Lions, 11 touchdowns against the Lions. So it is not Detroit.
Okay.
Justin, against the Arizona Cardinals, Tom Brady, for a total amount of touchdowns against the Cards, only totaled 4. So the Detroit Lions.
Yeah.
The Arizona Cardinals. I'm confusing teams now.
Yeah.
The Arizona Cardinals are one of the 5 teams that Tom Brady did not accrue double-digit touchdowns against in his career.
Okay. Yeah.
Here's an interesting one.
Yeah.
What about the Bucks?
Again, another team that he probably didn't face all that much because when he was making his headway, the Falcons were pretty good.
Does this
And the
include
Panthers.
I mean, I guess he wouldn't have played them in the playoffs either.
I'm sure this is just regular season, though. I wouldn't think so. Yeah, because he wouldn't have played them unless it was a Super Bowl, and Tampa Bay was never that good to get to a Super Bowl when Brady was there. So the Bucs aren't a bad guess. I do like the NFC West trope we're going with here too, because I feel like in a lot of those seasons the Rams were, a top tier team. So he might not have played the Seahawks as often as we think. And even if he did, Tom Brady against that Legion of Boom defense.
Well, I was going to say the 49ers.
Yeah.
Because the 49ers always had a good defense. Even if they were bad,
Absolutely.
their defense was good. And the amount of times they played was low.
Absolutely.
Got a lot of guesses there. What are we officially submitting, boys? I should say, because it's 5 teams, I say 4 guesses each is fair, so you guys have 6 total guesses remaining.
Yeah. Justin, you want to submit Tampa Bay, and I'll submit.
I'll take the Bucs.
I'll submit Seattle.
Okay. So against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Justin, Tom Brady totaled 9 touchdowns against
There you go.
So you are correct. Boom, that's the second one. Rick, against the Seattle Seahawks, Tom Brady totaled 5 touchdowns against the Seahawks in all those matchups.
Yep. Okay.
So that is 3 of the 5 named.
Okay.
So 2 left, and you guys have 4 more guesses.
So Justin, I like your 49ers pick too. I do. I'm trying to think about. I mean, this one might sting. What about the Giants? Because I mean, the times that he played the Giants, how often did they play the Giants in the regular season? And then those 2 times in the Super Bowl, they were low-scoring games. So,
yeah, but I don't know. I feel like he's played the Giants enough that I don't know. Maybe it's in my head, but
maybe.
I
do like your. I'm trying to think of like who else might be a possibility. I feel like we've seen Brady versus Rodgers in the regular season a ton. Again, because Green Bay would always finish first, so it'd be New England versus Green Bay in the regular season every 4th year or whatever the randomness was. So I feel like they're probably a possibility for being over 10. New Orleans, obviously, he faced Drew Brees a ton.
Mm-hmm.
So can't be that, I don't think.
I do not believe so.
Yeah.
What about like a really bad AFC team? Because in theory, they really wouldn't have played him that much.
Like who? Like the Texans or the Browns, maybe?
Like the Bengals. Like, how often do you remember the Patriots playing the Bengals?
I just think of the Bill Belichick quote, "We're on to Cincinnati."
Yeah. But I only remember hearing that 1 week. So maybe the Bengals aren't a bad.
Are they all NFC teams, Dirk? No, don't answer that. Don't answer that. We'll figure it out.
I like your San Francisco pick though, so I would lock that one in.
Let's do San Francisco, and then let's do. We can't do all the NFC West teams, can we?
No, because I don't think the Rams. I think he played the Rams a lot more than we're thinking he did. So, because again, there were those years in St. Louis.
Yeah.
So, I would venture to say no to the Rams. How about we shoot for? Oh, what about? Risky. What about the Chargers?
I think they played the Chargers a lot.
I think so, but I'm trying to think of like random.
I don't remember any specific games, but Brady versus Rivers seems like something that the NFL would have pushed.
Pretty sure they faced in the playoffs at least 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, see, so that's the thing. If we're counting playoffs, then it has to be NFC because he rarely, if ever, played most teams in the NFC. But just for shiggles, we'll lock in the Niners and then I'll lock in the Bengals just to see how he fares against an AFC team.
Okay, fair. So against the San Francisco 49ers, as you guys pointed out, a lot of good defenses over the years for that team, even when they weren't necessarily the best at the end of the season. Only 9 total touchdowns for Brady against the 49ers. So joining couple of the other NFC West teams. So that is now 4 of the 5 teams that you guys have said. Have you gotten the last one, boys? Against the Cincinnati Bengals, Tom Brady totaled 20 touchdowns against Cincy. So it is not them.
Yeah.
One team remains.
So the only AFC team that I can think of that maybe, I mean, I know he's played them a ton, but a lot of these games where defensive struggles are won on the ground is Baltimore. That's the only AFC team that I can think of.
He had to have scored more than double-digit touchdowns, though, because they've played Baltimore enough that he had to have scored. I mean, he's got to have played Baltimore at least 10 times. You don't think he scored a touchdown a game in Baltimore?
I mean, he might have, but I'm thinking it's definitely on the lower end. Probably 11 or 12 against the Ravens, I would say. But I know the Ravens had really good defenses. But something about the Giants just sticks out to me.
What about the Bears?
You know,
again, there's another team that had a good defense for a long time, even if they weren't lighting it up offensively. They kept teams out of the end zone.
Yeah.
I don't know. There have been some down years. The Bears to me aren't like the 49ers when they were a bad team.
No.
They had a good defense. I wouldn't say that.
It's like your trivia at home. It's like we have the 49ers at home.
What the hell, man?
You proved me wrong. Man, it's not like I'm lighting the world on fire here.
Yeah. I don't know, man. Do you think it's the Rams? I don't think it's the full NFC West. That would just be really stupid. But he didn't play it. I don't think he played them a whole lot.
We got the extra guess. Give it a shot. I'll take the Bears. You take the Rams.
This is the last guess, I think, though. Right?
I'm willing to give you guys one more each.
All right, yeah. So I'll take the Rams.
Yeah,
I'll take the Rams. You take the Bears.
I'll take the Bears.
Against the Chicago Bears, Tom Brady totaled 19 touchdowns.
Damn.
Against them, showing you that they were very much no longer the monsters of the Midway. And then you said your other official guess right now was the Rams or the Ravens?
The Rams. Okay. The Rams.
Against the Rams, it's very close. But Tom Brady totaled 13 touchdowns against the St. Louis/LA Rams. It doesn't make the distinction, but I'm assuming that it is that in his career against them. And I'll say it so you can keep it out of your head. Brady did get double-digit touchdowns against the Ravens. He totaled 12 against them across matchups.
That low, really?
Yeah. No, I figured it was that low because that defense was.
It was very much field goals and running backs that helped the Patriots beat them.
He had to have played them so many times that I was like, there's no way he's below 10.
Yeah, but how many of those games were in the snow, too? Remember?
And how many of them were playoff games where Belichick Belichick coaches differently in the playoffs compared to what he does in the regular season?
He does.
Yes.
I don't know, man. The Giants are still there.
One guess each.
Oh, we are guessing again? I just assumed we lost.
I'm giving you one more. I like this.
This is the trivia at home.
Yeah.
So, you know. It's like the homestyle chicken noodle soup. We get one.
Mainly because I really want to see if you guys get this last team.
You know, this is a team that there's no real reason for me to think this. It's just like one that's sticking in my head right now. I feel like the Panthers. I don't know why. It's not like they've been great. They just never played them because they were always
except
bad.
for that Super Bowl.
Yeah, but did he score 10 touchdowns in that Super Bowl?
Well, no, but that was the 32-29 game, so that's at least
three.
Yeah. So
I also think the Patriots and the Panthers played at least twice in the Cam Newton era.
You know what?
But then remember, he played Tampa.
Them with the Bucs.
Yeah, he played them with the Bucs. Yeah. So it can't be the NFC South because of the Bucs.
You're right.
The Vikings, maybe.
I don't know. The Vikings have been like pretty decent in his career.
Okay. Or what about Washington?
Yeah, I would say maybe Washington and the Eagles. You know what? I also don't really remember them playing the Cowboys a bunch, although I guess they have in recent memory.
Yeah, but even then, like his last game ever, they scored 3 points. I mean, Brett Maher scored 0, but he scored 3 points. So
Well, remember that was also the first time Brady ever lost to the Cowboys.
Right.
Game, so
right.
If you had never lost to a team before that, you got to assume that he was doing something.
Or maybe the time that the Patriots did play them was the Matt Castle year. So he was already a game behind.
So I'm saying this. There's a really obvious team. Is the last answer. I might be giving it away, but I don't care.
You want to stick NFC East, Justin?
Oh, Rick.
Yeah.
He got it. He got it.
The New England Patriots. You played them twice. Once?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I couldn't
Patriots.
Well, I feel sheepish.
Yeah.
I felt bad. I couldn't let you guys not get that.
No, we were overthinking it.
Very much so. So in his career, Tom Brady totaled 0 touchdowns against the Patriots, apparently. It says 0.
Wow.
So just to name some of the other teams that you guys mentioned there as potential answers of overthinking. The Commanders / Reskins / football team / hopefully future Red Wolves. 17 total touchdowns.
Okay.
Who's the number team you guys mentioned? The Panthers?
Yeah.
19.
Okay.
Was there any other ones that you guys wanted pointed out?
Giants or Eagles?
Giants 12, Eagles. What the hell are they? 13.
Yeah.
What about the Saints?
21. Fun fact: against the Falcons, 28. They cannot escape it.
Who's the highest one on this list? The Titans?
If you're talking about non-NFC East teams,
not AFC East
teams,
or
non-AFC East teams, excuse me. Give me 1 second. From what I am looking at, it is the Colts at 34.
Oh yeah, well that makes sense. Yeah.
The Broncos at 31.
Okay.
And the Steelers at 31.
Oh.
Plenty of battles between Brady and all those teams.
Okay.
So that was that.
Well, you know what? It's too early in the morning for cognitive thinking, so I'll give that one a pass.
That's fair.
This is the trivia at home that your grandfather gives you that's really stupid, and you leave the table and go to bed afterwards. It's like that.
It was not that bad, but sure. Okay.
Okay.
So that completes this week's edition of trivia. But I'm not completely finished with the games yet, because I do have one more. What? Wait, what?
Why would you be?
So I originally thought of this as a fact or fiction, but I actually molded it in the time that you guys were taking to figure out it was the Patriots there, and I've turned it into a would you rather.
Okay.
So, lads, early favorite for the number 1 seed in the NFC. An NFC East team or the rest of the field? You don't have to say which NFC East team. But do you think a better chance of an NFC East team being the top seed this season, or someone else in another division in this conference?
Well, here's the thing. We know what NFC East team is likely to be the number 1 seed, because if any other NFC East team wins the division this year, I think they're not going to be the number 1 seed.
You don't think your Commanders are going to get 13 wins?
They're not my Commanders anymore. Stop it.
He's abandoned them.
Yes.
Abandoning teams left and right.
Hey! I'm not abandoning my Bears. We signed Mercedes Lewis. There we go. Let's go, team.
Bears for 6 months.
And what a 6 months
has it been 6 months?
Yeah, exactly. The Super Bowl.
Oh wow!
And what a 6 months it's been. The courtship between me and George Hallis has been great.
It does not feel like 6 months.
I know. So we know what NFC East team is going to be in this discussion. The thing is that San Francisco is the only team that I think could potentially warrant competition. But who's their quarterback? No one knows. And so, as boring as it is, I think it is going to be a repeat. And I think it is going to be an NFC East team. I think it is going to be the NFC East team we're thinking about, because if you look through the rest of the divisions, we already claimed the NFC South is going to be up for grabs, and no one's going to get to higher than 10 wins max. And the NFC North, if you're picking the Lions or the Vikings, as you should be doing, if you're thinking that you're going to get to 10 plus wins and win the division, that's not going to be enough. I think you're looking at 12 or 13 or higher, and it's only 2, maybe 3 teams, possibly. But I don't see any reason why it's not going to be that NFC East team we're all thinking about, from that hardcore corporation in Philadelphia.
Yeah, if I was a betting man, I would probably have to take the NFC East. I mean, there are better teams. I think that there are more good teams in the NFC East than there are in the rest of the NFC.
Yeah.
If I were to take those top 3 teams and put them against the top 3 teams that are left in the NFC, I would think that they're going to at least win 2 out of 3.
Yeah.
And look, it's not even like the Commanders are that big of a slouch. I mean, they had a pretty decent season last year for a team that we thought was going to do nothing. And they were the first team to beat the defending NFC champs, the Eagles.
Right.
So there was a lot to be proud of there. There's a lot to grow there. I don't necessarily know if they will. We'll get into that later. But I would take the NFC East over the field.
Yeah.
More than fair. I mainly did that as just a quick palate cleanser for us to move on to what the bulk of this episode is going to be, ladies and gentlemen. So that was the end of the games. As you can see, not as much focus on the other one as much as the trivia, because the trivia is just way more fun, at least for me personally. But that's why Justin is the games master that will hopefully be coming out of that sabbatical next week for himself. But let us get underway, guys. For anyone new to the program or hasn't been here in a couple of weeks, this is the main portion of the show. Welcome to the Sports Agents of Chaos 2023 NFL Divisional Breakdown, where we have been going through each individual division on a week-by-week basis. We talk about all 4 teams in the division, break it down, and give our thoughts on what they did good, what they did bad to improve. And ultimately, at the end of this segment, we are each going to be giving our standings predictions for to one of these teams. The way that we go about the conversation is we go based off of the end of last season's standings for this. So the 4th seed from last season, we're going to talk about them first, going up to the first team that ended up winning the division, in this case, the NFC as a whole. But before we get to the creme de la creme, the beasts of the East, let's start with the bottom of that division. That, 1 or 2 people on the show may or may not have picked them to win the division last year for whatever stupid reason, and very much regretful. But,
I mean, I'm not, because now looking at it, it's hilarious. Now look at it. Look back at it.
But ladies and gentlemen, we begin our NFC East dialogue with talking about the Washington Commanders under new ownership and potentially a new name soon enough, for all we know. Obviously, this news broke a couple weeks ago, but us being in the thick of things, we decided to hold off on it because we knew we were going to get to this division eventually, barring catastrophical events that would have probably ended all humankind. I don't know. Maybe the moon collapses into the earth. Irregardless, I don't know. The people I saw reports that the people that made that submarine are trying to go into space now, and I think that's a terrible mistake to say the very least. So,
if you can't fail under the water, maybe where there's no atmosphere, maybe that'll be better there. But
or we'll get a repeat of an Apollo incident. Anyways, let's
just one.
Take your pick, kids. So let's get on with it, guys. The new ownership of the Washington Commanders have taken the helm of the team, and they inherit Ron Rivera, and they inherit not Taylor Heineke, which I thought would have brought down the valuation of the franchise by at least a couple $1 million. But in all seriousness, the Washington Commanders no longer have Daniel Snyder. The people of DC were very much celebrating at that news because, as they say, ding dong, the witch is dead. Ding dong, the witch is dead. Now, some people might say a different word in that sentence, but we are quoting the movie line appropriately. But let's get to the actual analysis here. Ron Rivera, once again, being the head coach for this team, leading a squad that has a new quarterback room as a whole from what they had last season. Sans one person. But Sam Howell is projected to be the week 1 starter for this team, barring a outstanding preseason performance by the one, the only Jake Fromm. But no, in actuality, Jacoby Brissett is the backup quarterback of this team. They have Brian Robinson Jr. and Antonio Gibson as a pretty solid 1-2 punch. Brian Robinson Jr. Handled the bulk of the carries last season. Gibson kind of fell off and fell out of brass from Ron Rivera in the offense last season. Maybe if he can bounce back, get back into the fold there, we'll see. A very talented skill position group for the Washington Commanders here. Terry McLaurin, Jahan Dotson, Curtis Samuel, some talented guys there with a Diami Brown there in the mix who can just, go down the field. He's a very much a vertical threat wide receiver, to say the very least. You have Logan Thomas as the tight end, a decent offensive line that, they've been trying to build out over the last couple of years, but is decent, I say, at best, if that. Maybe I'm being a little bit too kind for people that maybe watch the Commanders more than myself. But it's the defense that this team was hoping would make a difference last season and just didn't. And it's yet again going to be the defense that's going to have the expectations to make a difference for this team this season. It is on paper, very stout front four that should be way more successful than what they really are, of Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne being the two guys down the middle. And then you have edge rushing talent of a Montez Sweat and a Chase Young, the former second overall pick, who's entering a contract year because his fifth-year option was declined. So big expectations for Chase Young to perform here in 2023 for Washington. A decent linebacking core with the likes of David Mayo and Jamin Davis there. And then a decent secondary overall, with Cameron Curl and Derek Forrest, along with Kendall Fuller at one corner spot, and at the other one, at the time being, might change, but as of now, it is saying that Emmanuel Forbes, the draft pick from this past draft, is going to be very much there. It doesn't surprise me that he is projected to be a starter, because I think all three of us very much were fans of his talent as we were going through our personal mock draft that we did on the show. So that is a breakdown of the roster. Justin, I'm going to throw it over to you first. Your thoughts about the Commanders for the 2023 season, and maybe, and you both can mention this as well, as we're going to be talking about them here. The new ownership for that team, and what that can finally do to take that dark cloud that has been hovering over this organization since, what year did Snyder take over? 1999, 1998. Yeah, that has been hanging over this organization since the late 90s.
Going through this roster, there's a ton of talent on this team. Young, really strong talent. So I'm not even going to put it on the players this year. I really think that it's going to come down to coaching. And as much as I've liked Ron Rivera throughout his career, there's a lack of success that's unsettling there. I want to say he's on the hot seat, but, everyone and their grandmother swears by Ron Rivera, especially in D.C., so we'll see how that goes. But I really do. I like the moves that they've made. I like the talent that they have. They're deep in almost every position. And now it's going to be about stringing wins together and bringing this young fledgling team into maturity. Is it something that's possible? We'll see. We'll have to go through their schedule, and we'll obviously give the regular season breakdown towards the end of the episode. But I like the steps that they've made.
I thought there was a little bit more there.
Yeah.
No, fair enough. And I'm kind of with you. Like, Ron Rivera is very much one of those guys that, you're going to be told by a bunch of pundits and analysts, he's a locker room guy. The players are going to be fans of him, that, and the third. But I think in today's game, it's very much, it takes more than to just be a locker room guy. It takes more than to just have the good enough personality. And maybe for this entire case, it's just been, right place, right time with the Ron Rivera tenure in DC, we saw this coming for a couple of years now, but we were assuming was going to be the eventual end of the Dan Snyder tenure in Washington. And it makes sense from a leadership perspective that Ron Rivera has been able to be there. And I know people are going to point out the fact, well, he did win a division there, with a sub 500 record, or barely above 500. What were they, 7-8-1? Is when they won the division?
They were 7-9. They hadn't,
Yeah, that's when this division was called the NFC Least, but now it's arguably being called the NFC Beast. This is arguably the best division on the NFC side of things, top to bottom. I'm with you, Justin. I think the Commanders, as a 4th seed, are a lot better than even some of the 2 and 3 seeds in the divisions we've been speaking about the last couple weeks for the NFC side of things. So the Commanders are good, but Ron Rivera, are you the guy? Are you the man? No, I don't think so. Rick, your thoughts about the Commanders, your, I guess, former Commanders. So yet another, steak knife to the heart of this team. Your thoughts about the Commanders, and also, give us a little bit more about, your thoughts with Dan Snyder no longer being there.
Well, the bloated whale and the narcissistic demon are both gone from this team. That's Dan and Tanya Snyder. They're both out of Washington, no longer owning this team. This is the Josh Harris and, to a lesser extent,
never mind. Go on.
To a lesser extent, the Magic Johnson era, but it's also the Josh Harris era. And I think I agree with you guys that Ron Rivera might not have the chops, but we're forgetting the secret weapon that's now the associate head coach and offensive coordinator in Eric Bieniemy, who they pried away from Kansas City. And we'll see if this is like the real deal. We'll see if this is the real thing for him, that this is like, he's the guy who is going to blossom into the next great head coach. Because keep in mind, too, this is an ownership group that didn't hire Ron Rivera. So while he's a very charitable guy who everybody loves, they don't know loyalty to him. So if this doesn't work out, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know if it's going to work out. I think Bieniemy is a step away from becoming the next head coach, and we'll see if he can really prove that he's the mind behind the offense that Andy Reid had in Kansas City. My thing with Washington is that, they've got a lot of very young talent on this team. Brian Robinson was very good last year, but you would be after you came back from being shot. So, there's that. You would be very good if you had that comeback. Their wide receiver core is young, hungry, talented. They also added Byron Pringle, which makes a really good fourth in that room, too. One of the things they did that I liked, too, is that they poached Nick Gates from the Giants to become like their starting center. Because aside from Nick Gates, this offensive line is, they're nice, but there's nobody there that I would say that's a standout, unlike the rest of the teams that are in this division. Like, the Giants have their guys, the Cowboys have, maybe still, their guy, and the Eagles have their veteran leadership. I guess Nolan Laufenberg and, Sam Cosmi are good there, but, who's really going to be there for them? We love this D-line, and we never go bones about it. We are fans of this D-line they have. They are a fearsome foursome, albeit Chase Young and his contract and the option. We'll see what happens there at the end. Their secondary is pretty good, too. Obviously, we like Emmanuel Forbes. Jeremy Reeves was a special teams Pro Bowler last year for them, too, so he's excellent. And I know Jurg loves their special teams unit of Tress Way and the Cheese Man as their long snapper, Cameron Cheeseman. But let me ask you this. Can you guys name a good linebacker on this team?
I barely named two when I was going through the roster.
Right. That's I think my biggest issue is that as good as the D line is, and they're good, and as good as the secondary can be, it's that middle core that's like, who are you guys? Who is David Mayo? Who is Milo Eifler? Like when did we get a guy from the Rhine Fire or the Hamburg Sea Devils to be on this team from NFL Europe?
I'm not convinced that Milo is an actual player. You totally made him up.
No, he's there. He was undrafted out of Illinois. Actually, he was on the Jets practice squad, by the way. So Justin can confirm or deny that if he wants to. Look, so here's the thing, too. This is also going to be a tough year for Washington because of now you're giving Sam Howell the keys. And he was good in his one game last year they started, but it was against the Cowboys' backup squad. It was Week 18. The Cowboys had already clinched. They had no bones to play a game. Kevontae Turpin was their starting center. That's how bad they were in Week 18. You know that for a fact. So can a year of Sam Howell be a good thing against certain teams they're going to play? Because remember, they've got the AFC East, which comes with it the Bills, the Dolphins, the Jets, even Bill Belichick's defense, and the NFC West, which has the Seahawks and the Niners. You're giving a rookie the keys to that. And I gave Jacoby Brissett a lot of credit to go here and try and mentor Sam Howell. And look, I'll give you guys a spoiler to my little later down the road preview. I have Washington starting the year 2-0. I have them beating Arizona in Week 1, and I have them beating Denver in Week 2. I actually have them winning all those games, but that's about as good as it gets for this team, honestly. Because I think their schedule doesn't do them any favors. As talented as they are, they have some holes here that are a little too glaring to overcome. And I think this is going to be growing pains for Sam Howell. He's a very good quarterback, but it's going to be a tough first year for the guy when he goes up against higher competition than, the Dallas Cowboys indoor football league team, if you will. So again, I do think this is going to be it for Ron Rivera because there's no loyalty to him from the ownership group. And you have a potential rising star who has been waiting for as a head coaching job for a decade now, and Eric Bieniemy right behind him, not only as the offensive coordinator, as the associate head coach. That to me screams coach in waiting. So I think Ron Rivera, I think this is it for Ron Rivera. I'll put him on the hot seat if Justin refuses to. I'll put him on the hot seat this year, and I'll say next year this is Bieniemy's team.
Well, maybe my last question to ask. You say next year, Rick. Are we going to throw out the possibility of this year? Because looking at the schedule very briefly, yes, it's the Cardinals and the Broncos after, in the first 2 weeks. But then it's the Bills. Then it's the Eagles. Then, 50-50 matchup with the Bears. We know which way you'd lean for that. Then it's the Falcons, which, again, we don't know what they'll look like by then. Then it's the Giants, the Eagles, the defense of the Patriots, the Seahawks, the Giants, the Cowboys, the Dolphins. That's a lot of playoff teams that they're facing before a bye week. That's the thing. They get a Week 14 bye week. This team has to go through 13 weeks of torture before they finally get a week off. I don't know, man. And again, we don't know how good they'll be after this, but then their last few games are the Rams, the Jets, the 49ers, and the Cowboys. Again, 2 playoff teams from last year, a hopeful playoff team this year in the Jets. And, the Rams at least still have Aaron Donald. Will they have Matthew Stafford by that point? Who the hell knows? But maybe.
Look, I think that this is going to be an ownership group that's going to be a little bit reticent to firing Ron Rivera midseason because not a lot of these guys that are part owners of this team know a lot about the football landscape. They know a lot about other sports. Josh Harris, what does he own? Like 3 other teams in the Philadelphia area. Yeah. And Magic Johnson's got the Dodgers, who were competitive always. And there were other partners who were like the Sparks co-owner and, other. So I think this is an ownership group that's going to be a little more, I don't want to say it's slow on the draw, but they're going to be a little more forgiving in this first season. But they know what's there. They know the writing on the wall. And I think Jason Wright, their president, does too. So I think, after this year, they will come together and it will be it for Ron Rivera, but I think he's going to get another job somewhere else. But I think this is not it because, again, you have that guy right there in Bieniemy. So give him a shot, turn the keys over to him, start a whole new thing with a quarterback that's new, a new coach, maybe a new team. But I'll get into that a little bit later on why I have some issues with that. So, but I think give it a year, and then next year we'll see a brand new Washington identity.
Fair enough. Justin, any final notes about Washington?
I was thinking about what Rick said with the linebackers and how vital that is to everything Ron Rivera always does, which might be one of their issues. They had Kuechly in Carolina, and that really helped them. They haven't been able to find that kind of guy in Washington, so that could be part of his issue.
Yeah, more than fair. Will they become the Red Wolves after this season? That's the question I want to see. The answer should be yes. That's such a good name. But regardless, my dreams will be dashed, as will most Commanders fans after this, because let's be real here, probably spoiler may or may not make the playoffs. But speaking of playoffs, speaking of teams that may have success this season, let's start getting into it. Let's start getting to the teams that made the playoffs in this division last season. The New York Football Giants, one of the darlings of the NFL world last season, shocked a lot of people with how good they ended up performing. Some thought ahead and thought, no, that looks a bit unsustainable and it's going to get caught up to them eventually via talent. And it did. And we started to see some cracks late in the regular season of them not being the team necessarily that most people would have thought they were. But they did win a playoff game. Granted, it was against frauds, but they still did win a playoff game before, rightfully so, getting absolutely shellacked up and down the field by the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC divisional round, which, that happens. Have the Giants made enough progress this offseason to where they won't get smacked by 34 scores in the playoffs this season by the superior teams? Well, let's see about that. Giants roster, they returned Daniel Jones, who signed a very, 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 very lucrative contract for himself at a massive pay raise in the offseason. Was it 4,140 or 4,160? I always forget the final number.
I think it was 4,160, but I'll confirm that.
Mm-hmm. So Daniel Jones is once again in the fold as the starting quarterback as expected. Saquon Barkley, another transaction that happened the last couple of weeks that we decided to wait on, finally back with the team. Didn't sign the franchise tag, but did sign a 1-year deal with the club with $2 million in bonuses, plus with his base salary, I think was $10 million or something like that. So there's that. A wide receiving core that has Isaiah Hodgins, Darius Slayton, Paris Campbell, Sterling Shepard, Jalen Hyatt. There's some decent players, but nothing eye-opening there. They did make a move in the offseason for the tight end spot. They did trade for Darren Waller from the Las Vegas Raiders, of the Vegas Raiders Josh McDaniels policy of get rid of guys that I don't want here anymore, and also get rid of guys who didn't invite me to their weddings. So there's that. Once again, Josh McDaniels does not love. An offensive line that has some pretty good pieces if last season is to be shown. Andrew Thomas has become one of the best left tackles in the NFL. Evan Neal, the now entering second year on the right side of the line. Decent first season, although some people were expecting a bit more. We'll see if he can bounce back. and have a outstanding year 2 for himself. Mark Lanowski as the right guard, very good. John Michael Schmitz Jr. at center, a selection that was very happy. I'm sure Giants fans were very happy when it was made and could very much prove to be a stalwart in the middle for years to come. Then it is the Giants defense that maybe you could argue in some cases kind of overperformed what the expectations were last season and really helped this team win a lot of their games hand in hand with Saquon Barkley's running game and Daniel Jones not throwing as many interceptions as he did in the past. Ashawn Robinson is there to be really the filler piece for what the rest of this D-line is. It's Kayvon Thibodeau, who, if he has a full rookie season this year, can easily eclipse double-digit full season this year after his rookie campaign, could fully eclipse double-digit sacks. Dexter Lawrence II was signed a while back. He's going to be a fixture of this team for years to come in the middle of that defensive line. And then Leonard Williams, who they're hoping is able to do more than just get a third of his sack production in one game on the season. But, we'll see more consistency there, very much needed. A decent linebacking core with Bobby Okereke, who they got in free agency from the Colts, and Azeez Ojulari, who kind of goes in between being a pass rusher who can very much get to the quarterback, as well as helping in the linebacking core. More of an outside linebacker, more than an inside guy, obviously, and obviously with the pass rushing. And then a defensive back crew that, again, performed well last season, but did see a little bit of loss before the season last year. We were wondering, do they have the guys to really take that next step? And they kind of did. Adoree Jackson, who they got just before the start last season because the Tennessee Titans cut him. Good job there. They have Deontay Banks as the opposite corner as of now, and then Xavier McKinney, who's proven to be a pretty good safety. And then the question is, who will be the consistent starter next to Xavier McKinney at the strong safety spot? Bobby McCain is an option, but as of now, it is Jason Pinnock. There. And of course, best starter on this team, Graham Gano, kicker, easily. Yes, of course.
Jimmy Gillen, man. The Scottish Hammer.
It's a tie.
Yeah.
So, Rick, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Giants made the playoffs last season, got the shocking playoff win. As much as I joke with the Minnesota Vikings, they did beat a 13-win team in the playoffs last year. But again, this is my thing. Did the Giants do enough in this offseason to make you believe that they are A, going to make the playoffs yet again this season and prove that it wasn't just a year one fluke under Brian Daboll, and then B, can they have a closer contest with the top of the NFC? Because let's be real here, I think if they had faced the 49ers, I think it would have been a similar result. It would have just been death by strangulation rather than just complete all-out manslaughter than what the Eagles gave them, considering the Niners' defense. Did the Giants do enough to close the gap with those two teams for a playoff matchup?
So here's the thing with it. If you were to ask me this question last week, I would have given you an unquestioned 100% yes, they're going to close the gap a little bit more. This week, they lost their key free agent center, J.C. Hassenauer, who they brought in from Pittsburgh, tore his triceps in camp, and he's on IR, which means that a team that saw John Feliciano and Nick Gates walk is now going to rely heavily on Sean Harlow, who was the Cardinals center last year, Ben Bredesen, who's listed as a center but really was a guard, or the second-round rookie John Michael Schmitz as their center. Now, the rest of their offensive line is good because, again, when you've got two nasty tackles like Evan Neal and Andrew Thomas there, your exterior is good. Your interior, though, with Shane Lemieux and Mark Lewinsky and those guys, I don't know. I still think that they've closed the gap, but it's not as big as it was before the injury happened. In the offseason, they needed to do two things. They needed to sign Daniel Jones and sign Saquon Barkley. Well, they gave Jones that 4-year, $160 million contract, and they gave Barkley a pound on the back and the tag. And so that was pretty much it. It's played out the way that it's played out, but this Giants offense needs those two guys to be at their core, at their top tier, to really make this engine run. I'm fascinated by this wide receiver room, though, because of how diversified it is with the younger guys, the main hold that stays, and also the veterans who are looking to make a comeback here. Keep this in mind, too. They signed Cole Beasley, and they have Jamison Crowder as well, who are going to be competing against Wan'Dale Robinson and two rookies in Jalen Hyatt, who I'm very high on, and Bryce Ford Wheaton out of West Virginia. In addition to them signing Paris Campbell, who slides right in as the wide receiver 2. But who's your wide receiver 1? Is it Hodgins? Is it Slayton? Are you going to give Sterling Shepard that rub again? Like, Paris Campbell's not a true wide receiver 1, so you need to find who that guy's going to be. Getting Darren Waller was big for them because they needed a good – and Daniel Bellinger's very good. He's a very good young player. But Darren Waller is a game changer for this offense. And on defense, their linebacking core is excellent, and their D-line is really, really good too. But where was their big hole in the secondary? When McKinney went out last year with the ATV injury, when Adoree Jackson went out after Brian Daboll decided to, for some reason, have him returning punts and him getting hurt, which I get it. Richie James was terrible at returning punts, so what do? Ship him off to Kansas City. Great. Good job. So now there's a new guy in there. So now that he's back full strength and you have Deonte Banks, who's there as well, who they drafted first round, this Giants team is more complete with more players and a better depth. And I think they're going to be better than they were last year. Now, you're right. They did show a lot of cracks towards the end of the season. Well, let's take a look at the end of their season after their bye in Week 13. My God, another team with a late bye in this division, right? They go hosting Green Bay. Then they go to New Orleans, to Philadelphia, host the Rams, and then host Philadelphia again. You play the Eagles twice in the last 3 weeks of the season. So if you're a Giants team that wants to be good, you better be good in the onset and by the bye, be comfortable enough to survive those last 5 weeks because that's a run. Even though some of those teams in there aren't the strongest. I mean, we'll see what Derek Carr is in New Orleans, and Lord knows we know what Jordan Love's going to be in Green Bay. By that point, you better be good. I think this team can be. I think that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane showed a lot of progress and a lot of promise and took the Giants to a really good spot. They were the surprises. Ain't no surprises anymore. Now that the Giants aren't able to schedule, other teams will know they're coming. And that Week 4 game is a bit of a revenge game. October 2nd, Monday Night Football, 8:15 p.m., MetLife Stadium, Geno Smith and the Seattle Seahawks come to play. So remember how that game was? I remember how that game was. I was walking around in Vegas in the casinos at the time because I was off that weekend. I remember how that game was. It wasn't pretty, the Giants. Richie James. That's why he got, bye-bye, kiboshed. So we'll see what happens this year. But I do think the Giants are going to be better this year than they were last year. And I think, we'll see. It really does depend upon Barkley's health because who's behind him? Gary Brightwell, Matt Breida, Eric Gray, James Robinson.
But Rick, I've been told that it doesn't matter who the running back is, that it'll all be fine at the end of the day.
It does matter, though. No. It does matter.
No. I've been told it doesn't matter. I've been told that their bodies don't matter and that they shouldn't get paid.
Listen, Jim Irsay can try and pay $20 million to move a whale from Florida to the Pacific Ocean, but he can't pay a running back? Come on.
I've been told it doesn't matter. I don't know. In all seriousness, I made it very clear in the second half of last season, I thought that there was going to be a fall incoming for the Giants, and that was very much sort of the case. They had a 4-game stretch they had a stretch of 6 games where they lost 4 of the 6, only won 1, and the other one was tied. That infamous game against the Washington Commanders, which
I did say the Commanders were going to have a tie last year. Just picked the wrong game. So, Justin.
Okay, there's that. My thing with the Giants last season and did they get better is you got him off camera. Jeez. And his camera froze there for a second. But going back to the Giants, my thing with this team last season, I said it and I'll continue to say it, and I really want to see how the season starts off for them. They were winning in unsustainable ways. Look at their wins from last season. 21-20 over the Tennessee Titans. Now, was I thankful for that result? Yes. But still only a 1-point game. 21-20 over the Titans, 19-16 over the Carolina Panthers. Considering what they were at the start of the season with Matt Rule, the fact they only beat them by 3 points there, guys. They beat the Packers in London, baby, 27-22. That was a blown lead. 24-20 against the Ravens. I believe there was a blown lead there. Houston Texans, 24-16. 20-12 over the Commanders in the second game. They had only one double-digit victory last season. One. And that was against the Indianapolis Colts in Week 17. And the Colts didn't have a head coach at that point. Let's be real here. Wasn't head coach. This Giants team for the season they had last year, I think they were the definition of being extremely advantageous and taking advantage of opportunities. And look, at the end of the day in sports, that is sometimes how you do it. I'm not faulting them for it. But to assume that might be the case for 2 years in a row is the thing, because just from a talent perspective, I don't know if this team got up to a level where they're going to be definitively beating anyone. And my thing is, and that's why I asked the second question of, do I think that there is like how close the gap is to them in the top teams? I don't think it's close. I just don't. I think if they face the Eagles again in the postseason, I think the Eagles are going to roughshod them again. I think if they face the 49ers in the postseason, I think the 49ers are going to beat them by 2 scores, no matter who the quarterback is. Even Justin could be the quarterback, and I think the Giants are going to lose that game by at least 10. Like, I've seen you throw, Justin. You have an arm that just people don't know about. But I ultimately am like, last season I was kind of like, oh, this is a nice story, but eventually the bottom of the barrel is going to come out. I think that's the same case this season. I just don't see it where the Giants are a team that is a commanding presence to where anyone should, like, will they be good? Sure. Like, there are teams that they're going to take advantage of. They have week 2 against the Cardinals. Goddamn, that's basically everyone's second bye week. I mean, Rick, you say they have a week 13 bye week. They low-key have one in week 2 in that way of things. They have the Raiders in week 9. They have the 2 games against Washington, who I mean, going to assume that we all are thinking the same thing about them. This is not a schedule like last season where there's a lot of cupcake games here. And they had that last year, and they didn't beat those teams by wide margins. So if you couldn't beat the teams that ended up having some higher draft picks in this past draft, why am I going to assume that you're going to be able to consistently be in a bunch of these games against the likes of Seattle, Miami, Buffalo? And week 3 against the 49ers. That's 4 weeks in a row with teams that made the postseason last year. This Giants team just doesn't give me as much confidence as they did as they were at the start of last season. And the competition is tougher. And I'm telling you, man, you can only get away with so many double-digit comeback victories like they did and 1-score victories like they did last season. You want to know who you can ask for reference for that? Matthew Stafford in Detroit. Remember that one season where the Lions had like 10 wins, but like 7 of them were 1-score games, and the next season they lost almost all their 1-score games? I think with Kirk Cousins in the Commanders one season, it was a similar thing. Bunch of 1-score wins. Next season, missed the play. Like, that is not a sustainable way to win in this league. It's just not. And if there was a better quarterback there, I would have the talent, but I would have the maybe belief in them, but there's not at the end of the day. You don't have the quarterback to make me think you've actually taken that next step. You just don't. You just paid the same quarterback you had last season to hopefully make less mistakes.
Well, but has he turned the corner, though? That's the real question. I think that's kind of, you need to prove that this year wasn't a fluke. And if Daniel Jones has a year similar to last year with a little more production, maybe he has turned the corner. Maybe Mike Kafka has become the answer for this team. But
is turning the corner just only throwing the ball enough to where you only threw the 5 picks? They protected him heavy last season. And that's why I was really annoyed with the whole Saquon conversation, because like, Saquon helped make this dude look good. Why are we not giving skill position players the credit they deserve? He helped make Daniel Jones. He helped make it so that Brian Daboll could protect him in the offense. That was very much an offense geared towards, we cannot allow Daniel Jones to throw the football enough. Which, granted, I give you credit for not forcing him to be a player he's not. But at the same time, I'm also going to hold that against you when it comes to your overall roster talent evaluation. So that's my thing. To answer my second question, I just don't think they've closed the gap in any way, shape, or form to the powers in the NFC. I just don't think they did, personally. Justin, your thoughts about the Giants in 2023?
Let me say this. I do think they improved. I think that the positions that they needed to improve on were difficult this offseason. They weren't positions that were deep in the draft. They weren't positions that were deep in free agency. I think they did a good job with the pieces that were available. Now, to talk on what Jurg said about them winning unsustainable, I don't necessarily think that being in 1-score games is unsustainable. I think the idea that they're going to come from behind so often is. And if they're going to be the same team that they were last year, you're going to look for them to start faster throughout the year. They're not going to have the toughest schedule in the NFC East because they came in 3rd place. But what they are going to do is they are going to play a tough AFC division in the East, and they're going to play their own division, which is strong as well. So I do expect them to play up to the level of the talented teams that are there. But look, the biggest issue I saw last year offensively was the lack of skill position players. I mean, Saquon had to account for 25 to 30% of that offense, and they led the league. They were among the top in drop passes. So for everything good that Daniel Jones did, his team wasn't great in helping him out after the fact. That offensive line could be very improved this year. We'll see what happens at the center position, as Rick said. But I do expect Saquon to take on that same role and be good and protect Daniel Jones. I think the coordinators have done a great job molding him into the quarterback they need him to be. He doesn't have to be Josh Allen, but look at the difference when Brian Daboll wasn't there anymore. All of a sudden, those turnovers are back up. They run a specific system to make the quarterback look good. Daniel Jones has done well in it. And now they've added some receivers, an extra tight end, and some players that hopefully, one, can stay healthy, and two, can really help him improve on what was a solid season last year. He's still a young quarterback. He still has the tools to improve. If he can keep his turnover numbers low like he did last year, and these guys can catch some of these balls, because, again, they have a much improved wide receiver core in my mind. I mean, adding Jalen Hyatt and Paris Campbell and Darren Waller and Saquon is back. Breida has been good catching the ball out of the backfield. They can be a much better offense this year. And their defense was already pretty solid.
Yeah, I mean that's the big thing too, is that Sterling Shepard was hurt last year, and they were relying on role players, and now you have actual guys who are actual wide receivers instead of role players that are there. So the weaponry is there for the Giants to improve themselves a little bit. Again, Shepard was hurt. Lemieux was hurt. There was a time for a bit they had a lot of players that were out. They were relying on guys that were cast-offs. Bellinger was out. Yeah, exactly.
They were the award offense last year.
Again, that really is the question. I think it's the big thing with all these teams, is that if health is the key, if the Giants stay healthy, they've got maybe not the name recognition, but enough pieces, I think, to warrant a good team that can make some of these other teams sweat a little bit. I'm not going to say they're going to win all these hard games, but they'll make some of these better teams sweat. I think you can see them making the Cowboys sweat week 1 a little bit here and there, and maybe they do stick up the win.
At the very least, they're going to be in these games in the fourth quarter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Maybe not against the Eagles, but those are just two
every game, but most
just 2 games, right? Those if you're playing for the season, you got 17 games. If 2 games you're off, all right, whatever. It is what it is. If you're in, yeah, exactly.
Listen, the Chiefs lost to the Colts last year.
Yeah,
they won the Super Bowl.
Yeah, there was a week where I lost every single game and had the favorites in every single game. So there you go. Things can happen. So
well, you did eventually beat the deer, but
yes, I did. The deer's been cast off, and that's a pirate.
To me, I think the most important stretch of the Giants season, because you mentioned it, Justin, it's the first 6 weeks of the season. Because Rick mentioned how they faced the Eagles twice in the last 3 weeks. To me, it's the first 6 weeks of the season is going to make or break what 2023 looks like for them. Because it's the Cowboys in week 1, it's the Niners in week 3, it's the Seahawks in week 4, it's the Dolphins in week 5, and it's the Bills in week 6. Yeah. There is a world, and it might be this one we're living in, they might start the season 1-5. They might. It's a legitimate possibility. No, it's real. They're facing 5 playoff teams.
Ooh.
And if they start the season 1-5, then you need to start asking questions about the performances and what do the performances look like. Because I'm saying this: if they start 1-5 and Daniel Jones does not look good in those first 6 games, I'm being real with you. I never thought this about him. He does not have the aloofness of Eli Manning to where he'll be able to get away with things in the New York media. They will tear him to shreds, and I don't think he has the mental fortitude to deal with that.
And let me just say this about the Seattle team, because I think that they're actually very closely matched. Seattle won that game last year because there was 2 fumbles on punts inside the Giants 20.
Yeah.
And the game was in Seattle, which is a hard place to come back in. It's in New York this year, and I am not betting on 2 special teams fumbles inside their own 20 to lose that game by what did they lose by 8?
Yeah.
So look, they're a good team. There was obviously some mistakes last year. They have to improve on what they did, for sure. Absolutely. And again, you're right. They have a tough schedule, especially right in the beginning. But it does lighten up towards the end. And if this team makes a surge in late November, early December, I'm not 100% surprised. I could see it.
I don't know. I would be.
They start 3-5 and then win 6 games in a row. Would you really be surprised?
I would, considering some of the teams there are at least going to be competing for playoffs. Because in that, if you're talking about late November, early December, they're going to face the Cowboys again. So there's that.
Okay.
We don't know if the Commanders are going to be good or not, but I'll give the Giants that win there, sure. New England's defense is always going to give people problems, Daniel Jones being one of them.
Yeah,
and
but
then
it's Mac Jones. Come on now.
It might be Bailey Zappi, right?
regardless, it's still.
I got him on that one. He's like,
it's still
regardless.
Mac Jones. It's still Mac Jones.
So let's say they win 5 out of 8 at the end of the year. That's still pretty good. And
you're
all of
only
a sudden
you
now you're 8.
think
Now
they're only going to
that's
lose
8 wins.
I don't
9 wins to make a playoff spot.
I know the NFC is thin, but eight wins. 8 wins.
Well, we haven't accounted for all 17 games. I accounted for 8 in the beginning and 8 in the end.
Right.
So they need to find one win. And
you missed one game. You missed one game.
I know.
Well, we're also
one game is the difference between 9 and 8 and 8 and 9. 9 and 8 could be a playoff spot in the NFC.
It might be 8 and 1.
That was the Commanders last year.
Honestly, that might be a better shout at a playoff spot in the NFC because that tie screws everyone every year.
It does.
It really does. It really, really does.
Not having it also screws everyone every year too.
Jesus Christ, that is 2 shots you've taken at Justin.
That
was a good one. So there is the Giants for 22-3. Again, this is not the first team that you two are higher on than me personally. I see a lot of questions with this team, and I think
we said, it's just such a strong division that I'm not sitting here and saying that the Giants are definitely making the playoffs. I'm not sitting here saying that they're going to win their division. I do think that they're better than they were last year, but that doesn't necessarily translate to wins. You know what I mean? I happen to think that there will be a drop-off in production. I wouldn't be surprised if they were the 7th seed, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they're picking top 15 this year, just because of the difficulty of their schedule.
Yeah.
And like I said, the positions that they needed weren't readily available. I do think they improved, but how much really?
That's what, and I think in this conference, when you're talking about, again, to me, and maybe this is just a difference of standards that people have. To me, in the NFC, while we talk about that it might be easier to make it as a wild card team, you still have to face the top of the top. And to me, I think it takes a little bit more than scheming to beat the top 2 teams in this conference from last year, especially the number ones. Like, you can only scheme so much. Rick, they lost by 4 scores last season. A Brian Daboll coaching job is not going to get them close.
You don't think they can go 2 and 4 in the division?
I'm not talking about Philadelphia per se. I have a lot of questions with the next team we're going to talk about. I have a lot of questions.
I wasn't even referring to this next team. I'm saying the top of the NFC. I'm just talking about the top 2 teams that finished last season.
Fine. No, I know. There's definitely a clear line between the top 2 and everybody else.
That's what I'm saying. To me, in this, but see, it's about standards. Like, you're saying that the goal is to be better year after year. That should be the goal.
Unless you're Arizona.
Well, okay. In theory, for a team like the Giants who made the playoffs last season, this is why maybe I have this disconnect sometimes, because we actually had this, Rick, when we first knew each other about Bill O'Brien in Houston. You can only get by with your goal being to make the playoffs so many years in a row before it finally comes time to take that next step. Yes, I know it's been a long time for the Giants because there was the whole boat thing, and last season was the first good one they had since that infamous boat picture, which, if you're blaming your franchise's lack of success based off a picture on a boat, I think that says more about your team than it does anything else, but, here nor there. If your goal this season, and Justin kind of outlined it, we think that they are at least a bit more talented than last season. Per logic, and maybe this is my flaw here, I'm thinking logically, per logic, they should try to be a better team than last season record-wise. I don't know if they'll be better than 9-7-1 this season. Now, maybe does that mean they will be that again? Maybe. But I really don't think being 9-7-1 again and making the postseason as a 6 or 7 seed again is going to mean that they are going to face one of the best. Again, I think at the end of the day, between the Eagles or 49ers, choose which way you want to die. That's how it would be for a team like the Giants. And I don't see progress as being stomped by the same team year after year after year. That's not progress. That's stagnation.
Maybe stringing 2 playoff appearances together is progress. Again, I don't expect them to be good. I wouldn't even be – if they make the playoffs, I fully expect them to be a first-round out. Look, the Giants are good. I don't think that they're great. I'm not saying that they're world beaters. I wouldn't expect them to be among the top of the top in the NFC. But if you're telling me that the Giants team that we saw last year going into the season is going to now make a second playoff in a row, that is way better than I thought they would. And now, next year, when there is a much stronger free agent class and a different rookie incoming class, now they have something to really build upon. And now we're talking, all right, they make the playoffs again. They have good draft stock. They have good players under contract. They just extended a ton of players that they are, really high on. They are starting to get deeper on defense. Now we have something to build upon. I think this is an improvement.
Right, because again, going into last year, they hadn't made the playoffs in 6 seasons, and they hadn't made a playoff consecutively since the 07-08 year. So you're telling Giants fans, hey, you made the playoffs last year, you're going to make it again this year, 2 straight years in a row, you're playing meaningful games in January. They'll sign up for that. So what if it's another first-round win over a 3rd or 4th seed that's incompetent, and you play Philadelphia and San Francisco again?
According to us, they're not facing the Vikings again.
Well, no, but I mean, they could be surprisingly enough to get the 5 and play the NFC South team.
Listen,
they could.
If they're the 6th seed and they play the Lions,
a team that hasn't been there in how many years?
I'll take it.
You're going against your guy in Jared Goff.
As a Giant fan, I'll take it.
What I'm saying is that again,
one will win over the other. I'm saying this is a legitimate shot for you to 1, make the playoffs, 2, put your culture back together, because the Giants were a gold standard for a long time, and they all of a sudden were in the basement. And now you've got a good team, and you've got good coaching, and you've got standards, and now you also have a shot at winning a playoff game.
Yeah.
All right. Again, that is the top. I think the ceiling for the Giants this year, but I don't think it's unobtainable.
It's not. It really isn't.
And to me, that's still that as little as it is to bring in almost the exact same roster with slight improvements and still get to that level is an improvement in culture in my mind. And that's why I would be high on the Giants that season, and then even higher on them, depending obviously on their offseason moves, going into the next season. Because again, it's something you can build upon, not something that's going to happen overnight.
I've been scolded by someone to not just look forward to offseason after offseason. So,
who is that? Was that the Blackhawks ownership?
That's fan.
Yeah. The Blackhawks ownership tell you that? Come on, Jerg.
Well,
Move on.
All right, let's continue. You're the one that brought up hockey there for a second. All right, let's continue. Let's go to the team that finished second in this division last season, did win a playoff game in the wild card round before losing in the divisional round. We have the Dallas Cowboys. Rain Dakota Prescott, as I've heard him called. No, Dak Prescott is the starting quarterback yet again of this team, with Cooper on that good cush rush being his backup quarterback. They have Tony Pollard now as the starter there. Ezekiel Elliott and his RB1 / backup center career no longer in Dallas. They have a wide receiving core of CeeDee Lamb being the number 1 guy on that team. They have Brendan Cooks, who they acquired in the offseason via trade with the Texans. They have a guy who they hope has gotten past the injuries. He missed a good chunk of last season due to injury. He didn't look great coming back from it. They'll see and hope that he's much better this season in Michael Gallup in terms of the wide receiving core. And then they have decent 4th and 5th options there, but it's really those top 3 you work on. They did lose Dalton Schultz in the offseason. So do they have a replacement is going to be the question. I mean, they certainly have a gaggle of names here. There's Jake Ferguson, Peyton Hendershot, and Luke Schoonmaker. So if we're talking about tight end rooms names, that's pretty up there with Hendershot and Schoonmaker. Offensive line, as Rick was kind of alluding to, the questions of Zach Martin and what his future will be is very much going to be there. If they'll pay him or not, it's Jerry Jones. Take your pick. But the left side of the line is very much secure when it comes to Tyrone Smith. And if Tyler Smith ends up playing guard, which is what the current depth chart projection I'm looking at says, then that's left side of the line. It's really center and then right tackle are going to be the questions of this team of do they have it? That's a big if, so you can point that out. And then defensively, you have a defensive line that has DeMarcus Lawrence there as being one of the noteworthy pass rushers. Maze Smith, who was a draft pick in this past draft. Michael Parsons, who's been one of the best defensive players since he entered the goddamn NFL a couple of years ago. Leighton Vander Esch, who they are hoping was a 1 or 2 year deal that he took in the offseason to just stay with the team and try to rebuild himself. Maybe he will be able to get back to form of what he was early on in his career. And then finally, a defensive secondary, which I know that a lot of Cowboys fans are high on. They have Donovan Wilson and Jaron Kearse, Malik Hooker, who they recently gave a contract extension actually to, I think a day or 2 ago. And then the top defensive corners of Stephon Gilmore, Gilly Locks on one side, and then Trevon Diggs on the other side. So there is that. And a new kicker on the squad. It's actually a competition right now. There's 2 kickers, Tristan Vizcaino and Brendan Aubrey. So there's that. But Brian Anger is there at punter. Consistency. All right. Who did I start with on the last one? I think it was Rick. Justin, I'll throw it to you with the Cowboys first here, Justin. Obviously, double-digit wins again last season. Cowboys team looks good, but there's always something that gets in their way. I'm not going to ask you what exactly is going to get in their way, but you look at this Cowboys roster, what do they have compared to last season that could make them better, but what are they still missing that maybe potentially make them only second in this division?
Well, I really like the addition of Brandon Cooks. I think he's been a quarterback-proof guy for his whole career. He has 1,000-yard season after 1,000-yard season. He's been fantastic. He's a little older, obviously, but I think it's something that they were missing last year. They only really had CeeDee Lamb to throw it to. A lot of the younger guys were hurt. They were filling guys in. Michael Gallup didn't really pan out the way that they were hoping after he finally came back from all of those injuries. So I do love that idea. My question is going to be at running back, because the question is, when is Tony Pollard coming back? I know he didn't sign his franchise tag. He's coming off an injury. What production are they going to have there now that Zeke is not there? I like Tony Pollard. I think when healthy, if he's on the field, he can have, a lot of production. But one, they've always used a two-headed system as far back as I can remember. Even when they drafted Zeke, he was good, but they had other guys that they would incorporate into the game. Pollard is not the same bruising goal line back as Zeke was. I think he was more of a finesse guy. He catches the ball out of the backfield. He does a lot of things. But, again, coming off a major injury is a serious concern. And then not having a full training camp, guys get hurt. So if you're going to tell me you're relying on Ronald Jones, who suspended 2 games, Deuce Vaughn, and Malik Davis to be your running game, which they rely on heavily, I'm concerned. And maybe that'll change in the next month while we wait for Tony Pollard to ramp up and come back. But there's an issue there. And they also have a very tough schedule. Now, I'm not going to say it's as tough as the Giants, unfortunately, for New York, but they do start out with the Giants, the Jets, have a little bit of a soft landing spot with Arizona. Then they have New England, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. So there's a good chance that they maybe start 2-3, 3-2. I think going into their bye would be a victory for them. And we have to expect that team to, really figure something out offensively with the running backs. As far as defense is concerned, I think they addressed a lot of needs. I loved the pick of Mazi Smith coming to fill in that big hole that they had in the middle of the defensive line last year. They do have some solid players at linebacker. They still have Leighton Vander Esch and Micah Parsons, which has been an excellent duo for them. Stephon Gilmore is now there, which may help with some of the issues they had in the secondary last year. They just extended Trayvon Diggs, I believe. So we'll see what's going on with that secondary, because they did have some issues giving up the long ball late in games. But I really think that they should be an improved team. The biggest question mark is what's going to happen with that run game.
And what about, real quick before I throw it to Rick, what about the loss of Dalton Schultz? Do you think that's going to make a big difference, or do you think Dak will just figure it out with his new guy?
No, let me tell you, I was actually really upset. So in my fantasy draft, because we're in the Dynasty League, defending champ, I had 2 players that I was really shooting for. I needed a tight end, and I just was obsessed with Quentin Johnston. I think he's going to have a great year. I ended up getting Quentin Johnston, but I ended up having to trade my 3rd-round pick, which was my next pick in the draft. And I was waiting, and Luke Schoonmaker fell and fell and fell. And I was like, I was going to take that guy in the 2nd round. He falls to 3 picks before me in the 4th round. And I'm trying to trade, and I'm doing it, and he gets taken, and he's not on my team. I think he's going to be the starter this year. I think he's going to be very good, actually, for them. He's apparently having an excellent training camp. I'm not worried about the loss of Dalton Schultz at all, especially after his performance in clutch situations last year. He was good in the regular season. He didn't look like he wanted to be there in the playoffs. So we'll see, but I think they're going to be all right at tight end.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, they have a three-headed monster. They have three different guys here, all 24 under, that could very much step into the role. And if there are guys dominating in camp, I mean, granted, there's guys that dominate in camp every single season. Very much Paris Campbell's one of those guys who have impressed in camp before, and Philip Dorsett. That don't always translate to the field, but I mean, if you have three tight ends, one of them has to be good, right? I mean,
That's the Jets.
Fair enough. All right, Rick, I think via body language and how you mentioned it during the Giants segment, I think you're probably going to be the one that brings things down to earth here on your analysis with the Cowboys. So what are your thoughts about the Dallas Cowboys here going into 2023, and why do you seem to be less enthused about them as Justin and I?
Let's say you're in a car, all right? And let's say that you are driving the car, and you have given 3 tasks to your 3 passengers. Dak Prescott is the one who provided the snacks. So, fine, whatever. Brian Schottenheimer has the map to tell you where to go. And Mike McCarthy is your wingman in charge of music. This car is going off a freaking cliff, all right? Like, I'm not impressed with any of these guys. Listen, if you believe what Adam Shine said, and I don't know if we do believe it. I know that I was very anti this, but Dak Prescott is going to throw 40-plus touchdowns this season and have less than 10 interceptions this year. I don't think that's going to happen. Look, let's talk about it in this way too. Aside from Brandon Cooks and aside from Stephon Gilmore, who were the biggest signings in free agency that Dallas had this year? Ronald Jones, who, as Justin mentioned, is suspended for 2 games. Trent Sieg, who's their new long snapper, who they got on a 1-year deal. And Justin's favorite guard, Chuma Edoga from the Jets, on a 1-year deal. Dallas had a very quiet offseason in terms of bringing in those players. Now, draft-wise, yes, they did very good. Maisie Smith looks very good, and Luke Schoonmaker also looks very good. But they didn't really replace a ton of the guys, I think, that departed. Yes, Zeke is gone, so you have Tony Pollard still. Is he a number 1 back? And is he fully healthy? And as just mentioned, if he's not back, Deuce Vaughn is going to come in brand new out of K-State and, be he's going to look across the line in game 1 and see Dexter Lawrence right there, just licking his chops, putting the bib on his neck, ready to just to devour him, because that's what's going to happen. The wide receiving room is good. I think guys like Cooks and Lamb are going to be 2 very good options for them. But, Dalton Schultz was that underhook guy, who, if you had 2 really decent corners that stopped your 2 top receivers, Schultz was right there. Now you got to rely on a rookie who, by the way, Luke Schoonmaker was a teammate of Will Levis in high school. That should tell you all you need to know about him. This offensive line, Zach Martin, what's his future? The 2 Smiths, Tyron and Tyler, excellent. Very good there. What's their future going to be? This defense is good. DeMarcus Lawrence is still there, so they're very strong. But Dante Fowler is your big DN re-signing. Nothing about this Dallas team screams excitement. It just screams same stuff. Nothing really special for me. Nothing really new. Trevon Diggs, yes, he's a talented corner in the secondary. But do you know why his numbers dropped from 11 picks in 2021 to 3 in 2022?
Because they were throwing less?
Exactly. So throw it less to him. Throw it to the 32-year-old Stephon Gilmore, who's 1 torn Achilles away from retiring, and then try and figure out who else to throw it around to. Look, the Cowboys do have some good enough pieces, but to Justin's point about the schedule, let me go through the games from November 30th through December 30th, that 1-month stretch where, towards the end of the year where you're thinking, let's see if this Cowboys team can really cement the playoff spot. All right, here we go. Home for Seattle. Okay. Extended by home for the Eagles on December 10th. All right. At Buffalo, December 17th. Probably in the snow because, let's be honest, it's Buffalo.
Yeah.
At Miami, Christmas Eve. Home for Detroit on December 30th. Yeah. That, say what you will, if we talk about it, that last game is against the team we believe is going to be the NFC North champion. So that's a gauntlet and compared to the fact that they have the Niners and the Chargers in back-to-back weeks. in October. The schedule gods weren't kind to them either. So, I mean, can this team with this new three-headed monster in the offense of Prescott, McCarthy, and Schottenheimer do anything? I guess if you want to put Scott Tolzien on the roof rack and have him ride on the quarterback, fine, but
where does Cooper Kush go and all that then? Cooper Good Kush Rush.
Oh, he's the guy at the gas station filling up the gas, and they just left him there because, they forgot all about him.
How dare you?
He was in the trunk. He was in the trunk, and they forgot all about him to circle back when Prescott gets hurt, and now they got to go back and get him.
I thought you were going to have Tony Pollard in the trunk.
That's rude. Come on now. Why would you do that to a running back? He's not even in the car.
I love them, but I've been told that running backs don't matter.
He's riding in the sidecar in the middle of the rainstorm. That's what he's doing.
Wow. Poor Tony.
Exactly. Poor Tony. Poor Tony and poor whoever else is there. I have issues. The Cowboys are talented. I have issues with this team based upon their coaching and based upon the expectations for Prescott and the expectations for this running back room. Like Justin said, it's a big question mark for me. And it doesn't sit well with me, this Cowboys team. It doesn't sit well with me. And so that's why I'm questioning things in my mind. Now, that's me. You know how I do with picking, but those I think are legitimate questions that I have. They're not just me being, married to a Giants fan saying the Cowboys stink. Yeah! There are legitimate questions I think we can address.
I think there are legitimate questions. Like, I'm not saying there aren't, but I think like one thing that you specifically pointed out is like that they didn't do anything flashy in the offseason. It doesn't that maybe more bode well to the Cowboys, who for so many years were having these big off seasons, and now finally they're like.
But it's America's team. Why wouldn't you want to go play for the Cowboys?
But I'm not going to hold it against them for not maybe having it. And Justin said it, and if we're going to apply it to the Giants, we can apply it to the Cowboys as well. Maybe the free agency market this year, like we all agreed, it wasn't the best of the best. Like I think next year's free agency market is going to be way more interesting just on paper already. Like if we're not going to blame one team for they tried to do the best they could with what they had, we can't blame the other then. Like you have to take that total. Like I don't blame you that there are some questions. Maybe the tight end thing is something that I just bring up because, it's noteworthy, but I think they probably have their replacement very much there. I think the offensive line for me is maybe the bigger of questions because I just think the right side of the line, if Zach Martin is truly going to hold out, then you're in a lot of trouble there to say the very least. And it's not going to be helping Tony Pollard in any way, shape, or form in that case. But I think this defense has very much earned their credence the last 2 years to where you can believe they can steal one of these games.
But again, what was something that we talked about with another team? I forget when it was, a couple weeks ago. The more your defense is on the field, the more plays they play, the more tired they get.
Rick, I will say this. Even though I don't think he's going to have 40 touchdowns, Dak has multiple 30 passing touchdown seasons, which That's other fine. Quarterback in this division can say.
It's
fine. Proven that the Cowboys can make offense work. So if your offense can work, then your defense doesn't have to be on the field as much as the others.
But that's the question, is that you're relying on that running back room to make things work.
But I agree, Jerg, but you have to admit, they've been losing pieces left and right.
They have.
I know Lyle Collins wasn't great for Cincinnati last year, but he was a major piece in that offense. They had Amari Cooper for a number of seasons. He was a major piece in that offense. They had Ezekiel Elliott. He was a major piece in that offense. They had Dalton Schultz. He was a major. There's how many? It gets to the point where, sure, they've done a decent job in replacing these guys and keeping themselves relevant. And a lot of these guys, maybe they were past their prime. I don't know the Amari Cooper one, but maybe these guys weren't as productive as they used to be and will not be going forward. Maybe it was the right move at the time, but how many pieces can you really lose in an offense before it has some sort of toll?
Look, you guys are trying to put me in the position to play devil's advocate for Mike McCarthy, which is getting me annoyed right now because I am not the biggest Mike McCarthy fan.
Jerk, why are you Mike McCarthy's biggest fan?
Yeah.
Hell no.
Yeah.
He's the Tennessee Titans of coaches for me.
Three people you're going to have dinner with: Trent Baalke, Mike McCarthy, and Ryan Tannehill. What are you making for dinner?
Poison, myself included.
That's rude. That's rude.
Actually, no, they'll get the cake that you'll never get from me.
Oh, come on.
No, Justin, you bring up yes, they have lost pieces, but none of the guys that you've said, I think they have good enough replacements for all those guys. Dalton Schultz is he's a decent tight end, but I'm not crying all the livelong day that Dalton Schultz isn't on my team anymore. Brandon Cooks, I think, can very much fill in the role that Amari Cooper had. And Zeke Elliott, well, come on now. Running backs apparently don't matter anymore. And that one day we're all not going to be here and the NFL won't matter. I've been told that.
Running backs don't matter.
Huh?
Nobody said running backs don't matter.
I don't know. I've been told otherwise by
People said running backs aren't worth that much.
Jerk said it. Blame
I've
Jerg.
been told they apparently
Let's have
don't
a Zoom
matter.
call against Jerg in the running back room. That's what I think. Yeah, done.
Hey, I'm the one that said the same exact thing that Derrick Henry said. So me and Derrick Henry are on the same wavelength. Him being a Tennessee Titan.
But he knows you don't like the Titans, so he's no longer on your side.
There's good and bad in every relationship. Or you should know this. Anyways.
Wow.
I was talking about your relationship with us, but okay.
So, all right.
So there's that. All right, let's move on, shall we? Ultimately, I think personally the Dallas Cowboys, there's still plenty of talent there, and I think they have a bit less of a problem. And I will say this, and I also say this for the Giants as well, because I know I mentioned them in their tough portion of the schedule like I did this one. I'm not exactly sold on the Buffalo Bills this season as I think most people would be. But that is for next week's breakdowns of the AFC East. This week, we're going the NFC East. And for us to finish off the NFC East, we have the team that won the NFC East last year. We have the team that won the whole damn NFC, and they were this close to winning the Super Bowl last season. I'm sorry, Eagles fans. I know that might still hurt you to think about to this day. Hold someone that you care about to get over it. Anyways, let's go to the roster itself. Jalen Hurts at the quarterback, DeAndre Swift and Rashad Penny being the running back duo there now. They allowed Miles Sanders to go in free agency. They traded for Swift at the draft. A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith are the top two receivers on this team. Who's the number three? Heck if I know. Heck if they know. But they have still a pretty good top two. But if they don't necessarily have a wide receiver three, there's still pass catching option number three because Dallas Goedert is pretty good in his own right. Good offensive line, as you mentioned, Rick. Cam Jurgens might potentially get the starting right guard this season. Let's go, my boy. But they also have veterans there in Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey. Landon Dickerson is there. Pretty good all around for that. And then the defense, the Georgia Bulldogs defense that they have for the most part, aside from that, they're still pretty good pieces. Brennan Graham and Fletcher Cox, both veterans that returned to this team with their pass rushing ability, run stuffing, all that. Jalen Carter, they're really going to hope that he can make a difference on this team this season. Jordan Davis, another Georgia Bulldog. Another Georgia Bulldog. The Nakobe Dean, they hope, is able to take a big leap and be one of the key linebackers that starts for this team. Hassan Reddick, who had a career year last season pass rushing. And then we thought that this secondary was going to lose even more pieces than what they did. But they ended up keeping both James Bradbury and Darius Big Play Slay. And a decent safety tandem in Terrell Edmonds, who I believe is a former Pittsburgh Steeler. And then Reed Blankenship. So there's that. And, of course, Jake Elliott, still the kicker there. Piece that resistance. Rick, I'll throw it to you first. Thoughts on the Philadelphia Eagles and the likelihood that they are able to keep their NFC crown in 2023?
I just discovered something, actually, that's really interesting here. Did you know that Nick Sirianni and Roger Goodell are from the same hometown in upstate New York? So that explains why that explains why they were getting so many breaks last year because, Roger was looking out for his boy, Nick Sirianni. To that
conspiracies,
end,
I love it.
To that end, is there a team in the NFL more violently hated across the country than the Philadelphia Eagles and the city of Philadelphia in general? Cheesesteaks are overrated. Liberty Bell's got a giant crack in it. Gritty, the Flyers mascot, is a nightmare on wheels. And Nick Sirianni is that guy at the frat party who shouts, "Toga!" and you want to punch him in the face over and over and over again. Like, let's be real here. If it was for not the fact that they were a good football team, you just want to hate them and make sure they go away forever because Philadelphia is just the worst. Mets fans agree. Anyways, moving on. This team is good. There's not really much else to say. This team somehow got more stacked on the defensive line than I thought was even possible when they drafted not only Jalen Carter, but Moro Ajomo from Texas. This team is a nightmare on defense. And they added Greedy Williams in the secondary. So whatever faults you think there are in the offense, they make up for it by a vicious defense that is swarming and will consistently just destroy any hopes you have of being a top-tier offense. That being said, let's talk about the offense because you're right. DeAndre Swift took over the role from Miles Sanders, but he still had that nice four running back by committee tandem, Boston Scott, Kenneth Gainwell. They added Rashad Penny. So whatever you think their wide receiver deficiencies are after 1 and 2, do they need a third wide receiver? Because A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith are still in their prime and excellent. And while Dallas Goedert is good, Grant Calcaterra is also a very solid tight end for them too. It doesn't hurt, by the way, they have my boy Tanner McKee on this team as their QB3. I'm just saying. Hopefully QB2. Come on, beat out Mariota. He's terrible, but regardless, he's not here nor there. Now look, is there any way that you can pick against this Philadelphia Eagles team if you were just that vicious towards them? But I think you have to see the writing on the wall that this is an Eagles team that right now is just the team to beat. not only in this division, but also in the NFC. They're the most complete package that's out there, and there's no stopping the Eagles from treading once again back into that number 1 seed and back to that bye. Their schedule is tougher, but this is also a team. Well, tougher. Let's talk about tougher. Minnesota and Tampa Bay are in their first 3 weeks. I mean, come on. Let's be real here. The game they have against Kansas City on November 20th, I'm not going to say it's a Super Bowl preview. It's a Super Bowl rematch, but it could be a Super Bowl preview again. Let's be real here. And so, I think there's no argument really you would have against this team repeating their performance from last year. Maybe the only thing that I could possibly say is that maybe because last year they finished 14-3, they could maybe finish a game below that, only because I think they might clinch the division so early that they'd coast a little bit more than they did last year. I know they were kind of losing out because the Cowboys were better last year than I think they're going to be, but I think this year there's such a gap that I think it's going to be a lot different.
I'll go really quick on them before Justin goes. I think this Eagles team is by far the class of the conference. You go from quarterback to wide receiver to O-line to defense, and they were even aggressive at the trade deadline last year, and I could very much see them doing that again. I very much see them adding an extra depth selection or two at this next deadline.
Keep in mind one more thing, too. The last time that a team in the NFC East repeated as division champions were the Philadelphia Eagles when they won 4 in a row from 01 to 04. So why not them again?
Exactly, and I think it is. I think they're the class of this division. I think they're the class of the conference. You said maybe they lose an extra game from last year. I'd actually go the opposite. I think they might take an extra game, Rick. I think there's a chance that because I was actually talking about this with friends earlier this week. Not this week, last week. There's not been a team yet to win 15 games under the new 17-game schedule. No one's done it yet. Most is 14. I think this Eagles team has a chance to go 15-2. Like I was saying this, I want to say maybe it was last week's show. At some point, we have to stop looking at the schedule and saying, well, this is a tough schedule. But no, this is a really good team. This is where that starts. This is it. Are there some tough games? Yes, but this is a top tier elite team. I think the Eagles are going to like a little bit of the thing, but they have the top 2 wide receivers in this. I think if you go for the full division, I always like doing this in instances. It's like you go through the division, like who do you pick first in a lot of these? First quarterback, Eagles quarterback. First wide receiver, the Eagles top wide receiver. Then I think Devontae Smith will probably be the third wide receiver of that board between the other teams. I think the best tight end in this division belongs to the Philadelphia Eagles. I think the best O-line unit arguably is the Philadelphia Eagles. And then defense, again, I'm picking a lot of Eagles defensive players before I'm picking the players on some of these other teams. I think the Eagles are far and away should be considered the favorite in this division.
You taking Devontae Smith over Terry McLaurin and CeeDee Lamb?
No, that's why I said arguably third. I was thinking CeeDee to be second. I think there's a conversation between Terry and Devontae for third. Okay. I think Devontae Smith's really good, man.
He ain't picking Cole Beasley in the top 5. That's for damn sure.
He's not in the top 20.
Wow.
Anyways, I just want to take this time to sit here and marinate over my Eagles call last year. Double-digit wins, clear division champions. I didn't pick the Commanders. I don't know why anyone would.
Because it was the greatest swindle of all time. Come on now.
But, yeah, it feels good. It feels good to be right. Look, they're good. They're a good team. They've improved since last year. And Jurg is right. Like, it doesn't really matter how tough their schedule is because, in theory, they should be favored in almost every game. I mean, they were just a nasty team last year, and they're going to be a nasty team this year. It's not like they have that much changed other than serious improvements to their roster and holes that they needed to fill, like the interior defensive line, maybe some more consistency at running back. I mean, they didn't just get DeAndre Swift. They also signed Rashad Penny, who was lighting the league on fire last year before his knee injury. So, look, they could be really good. Their run game is somehow improved, even though they're the best run game in the league last year. And I don't have them winning 15 games. I'm thinking more maybe close to 12, 13. But, yeah, there's no reason why they shouldn't be the class of the NFC.
Yeah, just talent up and down the roster. And sometimes at the end of the day, it's just that simple. As we saw last season, talent just wins. The top 2 teams in each conference made it to the Super Bowl last season. And there's a fair chance that could be the same case again this season because this is looking way far out. this is even skipping steps and episodes, but I don't. I think only at best one team in the NFC challenges them right now, based off of last season, and it's not in this division.
It's Geno Smith. Let's be real here.
Of course. All right. That completes our team-by-team breakdown. Let's get to our full standings, boys, of the SAOC 2023 NFC East predictions. I'll actually go first on this one with my 4th seed. I have the Commanders as my 4th seed in this division. I just think the teams above them have a little bit more compared to the rest of them, and I think a young quarterback in Ron Rivera probably looking on the way out. Commanders as my 4th seed. Who wants to go next?
I mean, I don't think we disagree with that. Since I do my standings, the surprise is going to be that I think they're going to finish a lot worse than everyone's thinking. I have them at 5-12 because I think the Sam Howell experiment will work in some ways, but I think he's going to be overwhelmed in others. And as talented as this team is, it's not a pretty schedule. I think they got lucky a little bit last year and finished 8-1, but this year's going to really, punch them in the mouth.
So no late Ron Rivera press conference where he'll forget that they were eliminated from the playoffs this time.
Oh, no, because it won't be late. It'll be like mid-season.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Justin, do you confirm 4th seed?
Yeah. I'm thinking maybe like 7 wins, maybe 8. Ron Rivera does have them competitive in a lot of games, but unfortunately that's never really translated without a linebacker. So we'll have them in the 4th place here.
All right, Rick, I'm going to go to the 3rd seed for you first because I feel like your 3rd seed is a certain team.
9-8.
Huh?
How about them Cowboys?
All right.
For the reasons I've outlined, I think it's going to be they're a very talented team, but I think it's going to be a lot tougher of a year than obviously you two guys have pegged for them. But I think that this is just a team that has holes that are glaring where every other teams do, but they haven't solved the problems really. So I have Dallas at 9-8, which by the way misses a playoff spot this year.
Really? So we were just talking about before. You were saying you were with Justin's point that maybe 8-9 wins could get you with that wild card. Then you're saying 9-8 is going to. All right.
Well, so here's my reasoning for it too. Mr. Rivera, Mr. McCarthy, slips of the pink variety. Goodbye.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Giants are my 3rd seed. I don't think there was enough made between the Cowboys because to me the big question is no team is taken over the Eagles. So did the Giants do enough to maybe leapfrog the Cowboys for the 2nd seed? I just don't think so. So I have the Giants comfortably at the 3rd seed, which I mean again could still be a wild card team in the NFC. Got to wait a couple more weeks to figure that out for me. Justin, who do we got as the 3rd seed?
I have the New York Giants. I do believe that they'll probably win 8 or 9 games this year, but I don't think that they will fare very well within their own division, which generally spells for disaster. So I'm going to go 9-8.
Fair enough. Eagles 1st seed. Do we have all that in agreement?
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to say Cowboys. Maybe a similar 9-8, maybe 10-7.
Mm-hmm.
All Philly.
Yeah, I got the Eagles at 13-4. I had them there. I think that'll still be good enough to hold out the 1 seed. I do have, as I said, the Giants I have them actually a lot higher. I have them at 11-6, and I have them as the 5 seed. I think that they're better than you think they're going to be, and if they're healthy and in the right spot, they're going to be a tough out. So I give them that rub as the 5 seed, and I think it's an improvement for them this year.
Okay. All right. So to wrap that up very quickly, our division predictions. Justin and I have the same exact 2, so I could just go straight up there. We both have the Commanders in 4th place. We both have the Giants in 3rd. We both have the Cowboys in 2nd. We both have the Eagles in 1st. Rick has the Commanders in 4th place. He has the Cowboys in 3rd place, the Giants in 2nd place, and the Eagles in 1st place. So that concludes the NFC East chapter of the Sports Agents of Chaos 2023 NFL divisional breakdowns, which will continue next week with the AFC East, or again, I can call it very much the AFC Beast. And that'll be an interesting division because some person's team plays in that division. So we'll get that, to say the very least. But to finish it off, I'm talking about you, Rick. To finish things off, we missed this last week, Rick. We missed this. We need a ranked podium. Close the show.
Yeah. So let's discuss a few things here. I want to put them at number 3 because it's more relevant to this week's topic. The Washington Commanders, and the idea of changing the name of the team again. Now, look, the Commanders weren't our first choice, but they were a choice. Let's put it that way. But I have a bit of an issue with the idea of the Red Wolves or the Red Tails because your color is burgundy. It's not actually a red. It's like a maroon. So, I mean, why are we putting red in the title of a team that's it's a shade? Fine, it's a shade of red, but it's not fully red. Like, is the stoplight or the stop sign a burgundy red? No, it's a bright red. It's the red of Jerg's headphones. Like, it's not red as much as, red wine is red. And that's not even red either. Like, I don't know. To me, I think Commanders is okay. If you want to go with a different team name, like, the Brigade, the Armada, the failed senators, the indicted presidents, one of those two things, that's fine. The reddish wolves, sure, Justin, of course, with that one in our chat, that's fine too. The Reds in question marks, that's fine too. But also, we're changing names around. It's like we're giving, taking a puppy out of the shelter that's named Milwaukee and calling her Sienna. Fortunately, she knows what her identity is now, thank goodness. But, if you do that with like a 5-year-old dog or a 7-year-old dog down the line, you change the name 3 or 4 times, they're not going to know what name you're going to call them. They're just going to respond to the sound of a voice they hear, and that's not ideal. Number 2, scientific studies that make no sense. Why are we wasting all this money on things that seem supremely obvious to us? There was a study that I heard a couple weeks ago that children from affluent families are 29% more likely to attend an Ivy League university. Duh! Like, we wasted a ton of money and research and scientific proxy. Could have cured cancer, could have solved climate change, but no. Why do kids in this region of this family who get this SAT grade go to Dartmouth instead of other schools? By the way, Dartmouth, worst Ivy League of the Ivy League schools. Sorry for you. You're in New Hampshire. You don't deserve anything good. Live free or die, my foot. Anyways, the final point, the number 1 spot on this brand podium this week, since you all missed it so much. I want to give a shout out here to journalists. It's not easy doing the job that we do. And I say we because I used to be a journalist. Still am in some ways. I still write and do stories for my job. But can we all agree that if you're a broadcast journalist, that there has to be a pronunciation guide for how to pronounce things properly? The amount of times I have heard traffic reporters in New York City call the Van Wyck the Van Wyck, and the Van Wyck the Van Wyck. Settle on one pronunciation and leave it at that. And if you're not from here, go elsewhere. Do reporting in Boise, Idaho for all I care. Or go to Nashville. Report on how the Titans are terrible this year. But there has to be a guide. And there is. It's called the Associated Press Style Guide. Learn it, live by it, and don't tell me about the traffic unless I need to know what it is. And that's another thing, too. New York City traffic, why is it that every 11 minutes that I turn on the radio and turn on your traffic report, you never give me the traffic where I currently am? Like, I'm driving in the Brooklyn, and in a 25-minute period, I've heard 3 times about, there's congestion in South Jersey, or Connecticut's having problems. I don't give a damn about Connecticut or New Jersey. I'm sitting in traffic on the Belt Parkway because people are looking overhead at the planes flying in the JFK airport. Tell me about the accidents there, not in Connecticut. Who cares about Connecticut? It's a bum state anyways. And that, my friends, is your rant podium. Shout out to you, Bears fans. We're going to have a fun year this year, you and I. Not you, Adam. Anyone but you, Adam. And Duncan sucks. Thank you very much.
Justin, how many more states and cities have we now become enemies of because of him?
Rick just wants to watch the world burn.
I do appreciate it, but the viewership would be nice.
I want to know why you're going after the color of the Commanders and not the Browns, who don't use brown helmets.
There's brown as an accent color in their jerseys and in their helmets. So that's
their logo is like an orange helmet.
Yeah, well, Yes and no, because now it's that creepy big boy who's got just
Brownie
like
the elf.
brown or orange. Yeah, Brownie the elf. So,
Not my Browns mascot.
well, not by
Dog.
anything for that matter.
No, very true. Dog pound, baby.
Yep.
Dog pound. Bam. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us on this week's edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Another division in the books. That's 5 divisions down, 3 more to go before our penultimate episode of the season, starting with us giving our full playoff predictions and the return, of course, this season of the Sports Agents of Chaos Pick Challenge. I'm excited for that, to say the very least. Just as we are all excited to continue to talk football with all of you watching us, and we very much do appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining us on yet another edition of Billy Shakes and Graces the show, another edition of the Sports Agents of Chaos podcast. Remember, guys, fun, football, and chaos. We'll see you all next week.